Alright, it's time to talk. Welcome to day 17. Topic for today. I feel like, by the way, I butchered last night's, and this is pre-sauna. Wait, did I do the sauna last night? I think I did, perhaps. But anyway, I was exhausted. It took forever to kind of get my point across, and that's one thing I'm working on by doing these videos, is working on my discussion skills and my ability to get the point across. That being said, the point that we're trying to get across today is, I was reading, you got it, Myths of Light by Joseph Campbell. I've got it on the iPad with Kindle, so I can read it while I'm eating and not have to worry about turning pages with sticky picking up fruit fingers. It's such a good book. If you're at all curious about religions, and in particular the Oriental or the Eastern religions, give it a read. But the topic that I came across today is a Japanese concept, essentially of the yin and the yang, which was described in a way that I hadn't heard described before. And it's not just light and dark, which I'll get to in a second here, but it's that yin-yang symbol that pretty much everyone probably has seen at some point or another, where it's a circle divided by kind of a small curve like S line down the middle, and there's black on one side with a white dot in the center, or in the blackness, and then on the right side, or maybe it's flipped, is white with a black hole, representing that there's a little bit of each inside of each other, and kind of the interplay of light and dark in the universe. And it's more than just light and dark, but the description that I was reading was that it is referred to or thought of in Japanese teachings, I suppose, that it represents a river with a shadow side or a shade side, and sun, or in the light in the sun side. So it's bright, hot, dry on the white side, and dark, wet, cold on the dark side. In particular, it was more so Joseph Campbell's explanation that it's not so much the light versus dark aspects, but I think he didn't mention the dots at all. I just remember that as I was explaining this right now. That's a typical yin-yang symbol depiction. But he was talking about what really struck me, and I can't remember the exact phrasing, but he talked about the Zoroastrianism of Brotherhood of the Light versus the Brotherhood of the Dark, and how it's not that. And I probably didn't even fully comprehend what I was reading, because it just sparked a kind of side thought in my head, which is how my lovely brain works. It likes to go and jump off onto a tangent very easily. Focus is a struggle, which part of the reason I've used stimulants for so many years, because they ironically have the opposite effect, just like the reason that Adderall is prescribed to people like myself with ADD kind of stuff. Anywho, it sparked this side idea or contemplation of, well, maybe I've been looking at the battle of light versus dark wrong, which is funny because it's something that I kind of wanted to touch on. I might have even touched on in the first version of this vlog series, I guess, the first day of this month, when I was trying to explain why I was doing what I was doing. And it's because I do feel that there's a battle going on between light and dark, and we need to choose as often as possible through all of our actions to cast our vote in the light column, which maybe still stands, but that's also what it really made me think of, is that it's perhaps erroneous to think that dark, or the dark side or whatever, is inherently evil and bad. Perhaps made me start to think, I haven't even thought this through completely yet, I wanted to capture this before it leaves me, perhaps that dark force of entropy, which seems to be battling the life force that pervades the universe, at least locally to us on this planet. As far as we know, that's the only life that we've seen, but perhaps it is a force that exists out there in the universe as this light force. And then the dark force, or the dark side for you Star Wars fans, perhaps, is entropy. And there's so many ways that you can interpret this from a perspective of both light and dark being necessary. And the one that I just now reflected on in my mind as I'm talking is the idea of reincarnation. And again, please don't take offense if you're a monotheistic religion follower. I'm not trying to say that one thing is right or another. Any one of them might be right. I don't think any of us will truly know until we die. That's just my perspective. But you can know as much as you believe in your heart, and that's fine, and I support you in that. Anywho, the idea of reincarnation, and basically this is my worldview, my religious point of view, if you can call it that, my spiritual point of view, if you can call it that. If there is something like reincarnation that sounds coolest, maybe is the best way to say it. I wouldn't say makes the most sense, but in terms of trying to understand why we're here, perhaps we do have this all-pervading soul that puts on, as the Hindu faith, I believe, describes it, puts on this body suit in this temporary lifetime, and we reincarnate. And I believe it's the Buddhist belief, which is captured in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, that you have these 49 days. This is also something I read. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is kind of hard to get through because it's very repetitive, but maybe that's just me. I'm curious if anyone else feels that way. But anyway, the idea being that we have the opportunity in those 49 days after death to escape this cycle. Get all the terms mixed up. I want to say it's samsara. If that's the case, then it makes the most sense to me that the soul being here to learn whatever lessons we have to learn, the dark is necessary to provide us with the battleground on which we have the opportunity to learn those lessons, the ability to make the mistakes, the ability to have others do harm unto us so that we can learn to forgive. And that's a big theme in my life. And there's something I was reading. One of my friends is pretty spiritual, which is such a loaded term and way overused. It's not very specific. I apologize. She's into this life path number, at least finds it interesting, I would say, at the very least. So when I was over at their house, I looked mine up and I'm like a 268, and there was something in the long description. It's very similar to astrology, and actually I believe is somewhat based on astrological calculations and whatnot, using your birthday. One thing in there was about forgiveness, and also like perfectionism is one of your biggest struggles. And I was like, okay, some of this is eerily true, but it could be, as some people, critics of these, also point out, that if you throw enough crap against the wall, essentially, that something's going to stick. Or if you capture all possible nuances of individuals, like perfectionism or having the need to express forgiveness in your life, eventually you're going to get something that somebody that comes across that falls in that category that makes sense. Because there are some things that, don't apply to me that were in the 268. So anywho, I thought it was interesting. But yeah, just to wrap it up, that's interesting. And something I think I'm going to have to contemplate is perhaps the dark is not necessarily always evil or just perpetually bad. It's almost like the scary gods in the, I want to say Hinduism or Hindu beliefs, they serve a purpose. Maybe the dark serves a purpose. I mean, just like yin and yang, there's masculine, feminine. There's all these dualist principles that make sense when trying to understand the universe. So perhaps the same applies to this dark force, or entropy even. Fighting entropy, if we didn't have to fight entropy, perhaps we wouldn't be getting as much out of this life as we need to. So let's just end it there. I hope that gives someone food for thought, because now I have to go think on it. So, bye-bye. See you on day 18. Oops, that's the wrong button.